All right. Okay.
It's funny.
At 7 o'clock, I'm going to let them all in.
Okay, perfect.
Admit all. I'll turn my video off. Good morning, everybody. Just letting everybody in here real quick. We even have, guess what, a little tiny bit of snow in Paris this morning, which is quite exciting. Krystal is off on a little, her birthday is this coming week, and so she's off this weekend out enjoying Normandy with Giuseppe and little Coco. So we have Kate and Lauren here on the camera live from Paris, getting mobbed by the people, and there they are, our cute ladies with their pink hats, getting mobbed by the people in the near the Trocadero there. So we have we're getting everybody in here for a second. There was a few tiny snowflakes I saw on Kate's coat as we were just getting set up, so maybe we'll get a little bit more. It's a very, very gray day. Very gray day in Paris and chilly, but at least it's not raining. Oh, there we have our people protecting us out there. I think we have most everybody in here. Everybody is just jumping in. So good morning, everybody. I'm Claudine Hemingway. Of course, I'm my Instagram and everything, I'm Bleu Blanc Rouge. And then with Krystal, of course, we do the La Vie Creative Paris History of Hemingway every Monday and every Wednesday. She has a living creative, we like to say, on the podcast. And then of course we bring these videos to you. And but my true love is all of the history of Paris and all of the people that shaped it. So we love doing this and bringing this to you and sharing some of these really great stories about Paris that maybe you might not have known. So we will go ahead and get started. Right now we are, of course, it's a very, very famous view, isn't it? We're on the Esplanade de Trocadero. It is now, it is actually called the, hang on, letting in some more people. Oh, one more thing real quick to tell everybody to make sure you can see the video. You're gonna wanna click on Kate. Kate up there in your little Brady Bunch screen of people, I guess you call it. Make sure you click on Kate's image, which is of the Eiffel Tower right now. In the top right hand spot, there's a little ellipsis with 3 little dots. Make sure you click on that and click pin. That way you could see her video, of course, which is really important. So we could see the beautiful gray Paris today, and then you can still hear me. So make sure you do those things. If you're on an iPad or an iPhone, you could just double click on the image. Our lovely friend Carrie in England told us to do. So you could just do that and it stays up there on your screen. So just make sure you guys do that. If you have any issues along the way, let us know. And my wonderful friend Roxanne's going to help out, helping everybody tell people what to do. So anyway, back to the Trocadero. So it is now actually called the Esplanade des Droits de l'Homme, which is basically the square of human rights. Here surrounding it, there are on either side, there's these 4 golden statues, 8 total on each side. They were added in 1937 when this version of the Palais de Chaillot was created. They all are done by different artists. They are all different things. There's 7 women and 1 man, as it should be, right, ladies? So they are out here. They're all different themes. There's Les Oiseaux, which is it's funny. There's one that's she's holding a bird on the other side, but there's always seems to be a bird sitting on her head every single time I've ever been there. So I think it just knows. There's one for spring. There's one for fruit. The male one is the gardener. But this is this whole area right here is dedicated to the rights of man, and that was done in 1987 when the prime minister at the time, future president Mitterrand, decided to rename it, and they dedicated it to that. If you're walking up the steps from the street side, if you look down, there's a huge plaque, marble slab in the ground that basically has a whole thing and when it was dedicated. And so that's happened in 1987. So the Palais Charlot goes back much farther than that, which we'll talk about. But there's actually, most people probably haven't been to either one of these, but there's museums on either side. The one to the left of us is the one dedicated to architecture. It was created, which is one of my favorite museums in all of Paris. And I don't think I've ever been in there when there's been more than 2 other people in there. So, but it is absolutely amazing. It was it was the basis of the Musée de Monument Français, and it goes all the way back to one of my favorite people in French history, Alexandre Lenoir, who during the Revolution was basically brought in, and he saved all of these different tombs from the Basilique Saint Denis. He saved a bunch of different statues, and he brought all these things and put them into where we know as the École des Beaux-Arts over in Saint-Germain. And he saved all these things. Well, they ended up becoming kind of the basis of this museum. And then later, another historical architect, Viollet-le-Duc, ended up deciding that they needed to actually revive this museum. And they put it over here into the Musée over here. And then it was eventually, this structure itself was built in 1937. The one that we're looking at right now is the Musee De L'homme, which is a museum of man. It was established also in 1937. Of course, when, as I said, these were built. It was a collection of quite a few different museums that are now basically scattered to a lot of other places. So it had like, all the indigenous art, and a lot of that stuff went to the Quai Branly Museum, the Jacques Chirac Museum. But there are still quite a few things left in this museum. They do some pretty amazing special exhibitions here as well, which is really cool. But it is, this is one definitely that I don't think I've ever met anybody that's ever been inside of it. So, but it is pretty cool. Actually, in all of these windows on either side in both museums, you get some amazing views of, you get some amazing views of the Eiffel Tower. So it's pretty cool. The current palace, as I said, was in 1937, but before that, it had quite a very long history. When Napoleon had his son that he ended up naming the King of Rome, before the son was even born, before his child was even born, before he knew it was a son, he was going to have a very huge palace built here, the Palais de Chaillot. And it was going to be because on the other side of the Eiffel Tower is the military school. So he wanted to have this huge palace built. He wanted 2 palaces built. He wanted one on this side, and then he wanted one on the other side for his son, for his child, I should say. He didn't even know it was going to be a son yet. And so they drew up plans. Pierre Fontaine, who did a lot of his work in the Napoleon's work on the Louvre as well, he drew up the plans for this, but unfortunately, nothing ever came of it because, as we know, Napoleon ended up falling out of power. And when that happened, everything kind of came to a halt. So they ended up not doing anything. Before that, there was a convent that had stood here until the revolution. In the revolution, it was of course basically destroyed. So work in 1815 was when Napoleon abdicated, so everything was put on hold for a long time. But in the mid 18th century, it was actually, they were going to build an ark. They're going to have a huge ark and an obelisk here. That of course never happened as well. But in 1867, the Chaillot would finally have its moment to shine. And here, as we know, for the Eiffel Tower as well, they had quite a few exhibitions going on in Paris over the years. And so here at the time, they decided to build a huge building, a Neo-Byzantine and Moorish style building. I'm sure I will post pictures of it in the Facebook group. it's pretty stunning compared to what you see now. Of course, Parisians didn't like it when the idea first came up and it was first built, which is basically the story of almost every single thing that's been built in Paris. But at the time they built this, it was pretty huge. It actually had some lights on it, which is pretty big at the time. Somebody actually called it looks like a fly on top of a soup tureen. And when I show you when I post the picture, you definitely will be like, oh yeah, actually that's what it does look like. But it ended up being built for the exhibition. It stood for 60 years. Most of these buildings were never intent to stay. Of course, we know that with the Eiffel Tower. But the Petit Palais and the Grand Palais were two buildings that were built for exhibitions that actually did remain, but most everything else was destroyed. It never was really built to last that long. But the current building would be built in 1937 for another exhibition, and they would use a lot of the same, they used a lot of the same foundation, and then they used some glass and some other parts from that original building. So there's a little tiny bit of it still around, but not too much. But one of the most enduring images, I think, from this terrace that we have seen forever, and in just about every single thing you could look up that says Hitler and Paris, is when Hitler came to town on June 23rd, 1940. He came to town at 5:30 in the morning. It was his first and only visit to Paris, thank goodness. He stood there at the very end looking over towards the Eiffel Tower. He had gone to a few other places, the Palais Garnier. He had to go to Les Invalides and pay his respects to Napoleon. But of course, he came here. And one of my favorite stories of the Eiffel Tower is how the lift operators decided to cut the cables so the little jerk couldn't get up to the Eiffel Tower, and he didn't, and he left. So that's good for them. They did it. So, but right here behind us, there's a huge statue of Hercules, El Toro, right behind us here. This big bronze statue is by Albert Palmier. There's another statue on the other side. There was actually, when this was the exhibition, when it was a spot of the exhibition long ago, there was quite a few other ones. And if you go to the Musée d'Orsay and you are standing out front, the women that represent the different continents, and then there's also the rhino and a horse. Those were also all here at one point, and now they're at the Orsay. This poor guy needs a little cleaning up there. But there's also there's also some really great restaurants up here in these spots. There's also the aquarium you could take your children to go check out. And then we're going to head down into the garden. I saw a few little snowflakes. Did you guys see some snowflakes there for a second? Yes, Beth, the Architecture Museum is just like the greatest thing in the world. So we're heading down, and we're going to go to the right into the garden and around to a little part of the Jardin de Trocadero that many people might not make it to, but actually has a pretty cool little thing to see in here, kind of really on the very edge. Just like most everything in Paris and most any of the monuments, right in front of it, of course, is going to be very busy and packed with people, like it is on the Trocadero. Even now, I mean, I think we've all, if you've all been to Paris and you've been to the Trocadero at some point to see the Eiffel Tower sparkling, or during the day, you know, there's 5 times the amount of people there, but there's still a lot today. So down in around the garden, there's actually quite a few different sculptures. There is a bust of Paul Valéry, who was a French author and poet, and he was a national treasure to everybody in France. He actually, some of his writings, if you had noticed when we showed the Hercules and the Toro. Above that, there's some inscriptions, and those actually were all by Paul Verlet. In 1900, I love this when I found this out, he married Janine Gobelard, who was the cousin of Julie Manet. And Julie Manet, there he is right there. Julie Manet was the daughter of Bert Morisot. And of course, her uncle was Manet, the painter, and her father, Eugène. So he actually ended up marrying this cousin. And on the same day that Julie Manet also got married, they also got married in the Saint-Honoré de Eylau church, which is over in the 16th, which is also the same church that Hemingway married Pauline. So a nice little, I'm always excited when I find those little things that tie, it's, history's hundreds and thousands of years. It's still just a small village sometimes when you kind of think of it. But he actually lived in the house that Bert Morisot and her husband had built. It was their former home. They actually lived in that house. And when he passed away on July 25th, 1945, they had a humongous state funeral there that was actually held on the Esplanade. And then they put in this bust. Not until 1975, so 30 years after his death, they installed that bust that you could see. And over here on the side, I love finding these things. So these two structures, I know they look kind of old and they're kind of dirty, but they actually have a pretty awesome story. So on either side, there's two. One of them is the remains of the Hôtel de Ville, and the other one came from the Palais des Tuileries, which we talked about a couple weeks ago when we walked through the Tuileries and near the Louvre. But the Hôtel de Ville, of course, was built from 1535 to 1850. It took quite a long time to have the entire structure built. And then 20 years after it was finally finished, the Neo-Renaissance building ended up getting attacked during the Bloody Week by the Communards. It was set on fire on May 24th, 1871, and it burned for 4 days. Inside of it, of course, were amazing paintings by Delacroix and Ingres and everyone else, and those ended up burning. You also with the Tuileries, Tuileries went through quite a few different attacks over time, but then eventually this was its final straw during from the Communards. But these, as opposed to the pieces, there's a part of the Tuileries palace that's in the Louvre, but that's also been reconstructed. But if you look on the top of these, you could see where it's actually the markings from the fire. So up there, there's the actual markings. They backed it, they put this against a stone wall that they created to keep it up there, but it actually still has the markings from the fire that destroyed the two buildings in 1871, which is, there's still talk every once in a while, excuse me, of rebuilding. People want to actually rebuild the Tuileries palace and put it back up there in the park. I think that would cost a very, very large sum of money. So who knows if that'll happen, but it would be pretty cool to see it. These were the window. That was a window. It was a window from the Tuileries that was there. But when the fire at the Hôtel de Ville burned, it also destroyed all of the archives. And some people, like Sarah Bernhardt, who loved to reinvent herself and redraw the lines of her life and maybe change the year she was born and a few other things, I mean, who of us isn't 29 forever? But they were all destroyed, unfortunately, in the fire. So some people, maybe it worked out because then they ended up being able to create a new age for themselves. It's quite the dark and gray day there, but it's always still good to see the La Tour Eiffel. It's going through a huge renovation, of course. It's been in the news actually quite a bit this week for the color, which we'll talk about when we get a little closer. But we're going to kind of head back up into up towards the fountain, to the top of the fountain of the Tuileries. And then we'll come back down and head across and We'll show you I was actually kind of surprised about the somewhat hunky, these very hunky statues that are at the end of the bridge that we'll see. I was like, wow, those are quite some statues. I don't think I've ever noticed those in person. You can't really zoom in, of course. I think I see a few snowflakes. But yeah, we'll walk back up and then we'll walk kind of up towards the top of the fountain and then come back down. And we'll show you some of the statues. I'm sure the water is turned off at right now. I think it was last fall, was it maybe? The one of the fashion houses covered the entire fountain and created a runway and did their entire, it's amazing. And when you're in Paris during close to Fashion Week, they usually always are using the Cour Carré behind it, the back square of the Louvre. And I watched them for a month and a half set up and build this huge tent with flooring and everything, and always wonder how much it costs. And and then it ends up being for a 12-minute runway show. It's pretty astounding. But this whole this whole area, excuse me, when it was used for the exhibition, it was covered. You could find a bunch of really, really cool old photographs and drawings of what this whole area was. There was just these really unique, interesting buildings that kind of went all around the Eiffel Tower, of course, which was built for the 1889. So it was pretty interesting, and you kind of wish some of those buildings still stood, but Paris, it does a very good job of keeping a lot of buildings as it is. We hope Krystal, I'm not sure if she's watching or not, down in Normandy enjoying herself. She has a birthday coming up this week on Wednesday, the 10th. So we all wish her a very happy early birthday. And I hope Kate and Lauren are staying warm. It's a little chilly, of course. It is February after all. It's good to see there's some people there enjoying and taking photos. And we'll just head back down near the fountain, the Warsaw Fountain, as it's named. Who is writing on that wall? Just horrible. You always have to keep an eye on your belongings when you're in this area. They know there's always a lot of tourists, so when you are here, keep your belongings close to you, and when if they start to harass you, just say "Arrête," and go away. Or another thing is just don't make any eye contact with any of them, and usually they kind of stay clear of you. But down here, we're going to go down towards the fountain that looks right at our beautiful lady. You could tell already from here where it kind of looks a little bit more solid. They've been starting on the repainting of it. They do that every 7 years. So they've already been starting on that and getting ready for the Olympics that are going to be here before we know it. It seems in 3 years. So down here, there's quite a few statues on either side. You can see where there's a man and a woman, L'homme et la femme by Daniel Baquet. And inside the fountain, there's also a bull and a deer. He's just hanging out. running through. I am a Taurus, so I always like seeing all the bulls that are there. But there's a bull and a deer, and then on the other side, there's a horse and a dog. The horse and dog was by Georges Gouget, and Paul Jouvet did the bull. And then as we get down towards the bottom, there's on either side, I really love this one that we're going to see. This just on our side down here towards the bottom. There's two different sculptures. Both of them, they're done by different artists, and they're all done from one piece of marble. And you could see when you see this, it's pretty astounding because they're huge, they're gigantic. And this one over here, I love both of them, but I really love this one. There's actually a lot of negative space in it, but it's actually Le Joie de Vivre. And it has, you could see, some people say it is the women that are in there are of the muses when we see them. It's by Leon Ernest Drivier. He carved it from one giant piece of stone, which it boggles my mind that this is a more, of course it's more recent, but even when you go back hundreds and hundreds of years, it just boggles my mind that the capabilities and the talent these people had. There's just no way. It's just amazing. But you could see where it kind of gets the idea of the muses, because you have the one with a violin, and it's pretty stunning to see it. And what a view they have looking at the Eiffel Tower all day. But they're just, their faces, everything about it. There's animals in there, the musicians, there's the gentleman in there towards the back. So maybe that it is the muses that he's entertaining, or he has that, inspire them. Of course, I love it. Any of the stories of the muses. Also, probably because my favorite movie ever growing up was Xanadu, with Olivia Newton-John playing a muse. You've got roller skating, you've got everything in it. I mean, it's perfect movie. So, but this is such a gorgeous sculpture. It boggles my mind how people did these things. It's crazy. The other side, it also was done. It's more compact. It's La Genie, which is, and it was done by Pierre Poisson. And I think in the last few months, I wrote about it on my Instagram, so you could check it out, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, for all of those stories. And then we're going to head on over. We'll see what's going on. Kate says it's a little bit of a mess because it's a lot of construction is going on over there around the Eiffel Tower and the Champ de Mars. So we'll do some bobbing and weaving, but I'm really excited about one thing that we get to share with you that not a lot of people even know is right next to the Eiffel Tower. And because it's the winter, we're able to see it. So I can't wait to show you guys. I was really excited today when it's very early where I am on the West Coast of the US. And when I woke up and I had a message that they could see it. So I was really excited to be able to share that with you guys too. So we'll head on over there, and then we'll show you the hunky statues at the end of the bridge. The bridge that we're coming up, the Pont de Lina, which is Hemingway, sorry, Napoleon actually wanted to have built, of course. And he actually built 3 bridges in Paris, or 4 bridges of Paris. This is one of the 4. And because on the other side was a military school, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is where he actually went. The military school goes back much farther than Napoleon, but he actually went to that school as well. It's a 5-arch bridge that goes across, and you could kind of see where each of the pillars come. You could kind of see something on the bridge. Those are eagles now. They were eagles, of course, when Napoleon had it built, because that was his favorite thing. But then later it was replaced after Napoleon was ousted, and the people that came after him, some of them wanted to just basically erase everything that had to do with him. So they replaced it with the letter L for Louis the 18th. But then when Napoleon III came into power, he had to put the eagles put back. And they also, later on, they widened this bridge as well. And they actually reinaugurated it when they brought Napoleon's ashes back to Paris, and he traveled over this bridge to go to Les Invalides. So you could see up here on the one we could see right now, that statue is the Arab Warrior by Jean-Jacques Fouchery. And then on the one behind us was the Greek Warrior. I will put some pictures of this in the Facebook page, but yeah, they are rather, you kind of can't see. I think, it's one of those things we'll have to see the pictures, but they are actually, I was kind of shocked at how hunky these statues were. I was like, wow. But you always have to have some equestrian statues placed on any of the bridges. It just makes them even that much better. But in 1840, when Napoleon's ashes were brought back, Louis Philippe had the eagles added back onto the bridge for him. And the four horsemen on either end of the bridge were added in 1853. And we could see the river's been getting rather high in Paris, as we could see. It's not it's going over it hasn't gone past the banks of the barriers of the Seine. It's not as 2 years ago when the Louvre had to evacuate some of the stuff out of the basement, which they've since fixed because now they built an entire structure outside of Paris to store their overflows. Of the Louvre itself, we only see 13% of the collection that the Louvre owns. And when you think of how big the Louvre is and how if you went to see every piece of art, how long it would take, to know that that's only 13% of what they actually have is pretty astounding. I would do anything to go out to that facility and just give me a week there. I'll bring granola bars and water. Just leave me in there. I'll be fine. But the Seine, it has been getting high, but it does kind of do this every winter time. It's not as bad as 1910. I wrote a whole thing on my Instagram, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, again, about the 1910 flood. And of course, Zouave, who is on the other bridge that everybody likes to use as a measurement. So the Eiffel Tower, of course, they paint it every 7 years. So with the Olympics coming up, of course, she's going to get quite the big upgrade. But before, she was starting to get a little rusty in places. So it was time. And we have this one on this side. This is the Roman warrior on this side, and the other side is the Gaelic warrior. I will post some pictures. I say this every time, and then I get done with this, and I can't remember which ones I said I was going to do. So I made some little marks. Yes, they are stripping. It takes quite a lot of time. It takes 18 months for the process from start to finish. See, there's one of them. That's the Roman. It takes 18 months for the whole thing to be done from start to finish. They strip everything and they fix anything that needs to be done to it. Of course, the Eiffel Tower, everybody, it's named after Gustave Eiffel, of course, but it wasn't Gustave Eiffel that actually had the idea or designed it. So most people think it was him that did it, but it wasn't. He had two engineers that were actually working for him, Emile Nouget and Maurice Couclin. They actually had this idea to build a tower based on 4 pillars, and showed it to him. And Gustave was like, yeah, whatever. He wasn't too impressed. So he later ended up asking architect Stéphane Sauvé to kind of fancy the idea up and brought it back to him. And so then Gustave was like, okay, that's better. Well, the city of Paris at the time was looking for commissions and ideas from people to design to design something for the 1889 World's Fair, which was also in honor of the 100th anniversary of the revolution. And so ended up they were one of 107 applicants. This is most of everything in Paris has been built this way, except for the pyramid. If you watch the one about the Louvre, they kind of sidestep that a little bit. Most of the time, there's always some sort, even with the top of Notre Dame currently today, they put a whole thing out there where they're asking for submissions. But it was also with the Eiffel Tower. So they gave all these plans, and Gustave Eiffel, his was actually selected, of course, as we obviously know. But it was also because he was going to pay for most of it. So he actually was going to put up the money for it. It did come with a grant of 1.5 million francs as well. But Gustave Eiffel said that he was going to pay for it, for the most of it, but it came with, he wanted a 20-year lease of all profits on the actual building. So he ended up, that probably, I'm sure, wet their whistle a little bit, and they really liked that idea. So on January 8th, 1887, it was actually at that time just called the 300-meter tower. It was selected, and Eiffel put up all of his money. So on January 28th, 1887, the digging began. They had to go down 36 feet on the river side. They had to go down much deeper so that they were actually able to find the bedrock because they were so close to the river. And so they had started at that period of time. Much of the structure was actually created in his factory that he had in Levallois, Paris, and it was just taken. It was gone down it went down the river and came to Paris and to be put together. There's 326 workers in the factory, and there was only 150 to 200 at the time at the Eiffel Tower that was actually putting it all together. So it came together. It only took 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days from start to finish to be done, which is pretty astounding. It's very much a very large, Tinker Toys, erector set. It's made of puddled iron, which is an iron that is more fibrous. So it was actually pretty good to be able to hold everything. And so right here, if you could see this, I'm so excited because there's no leaves on the trees. Most of the time you can never see this. I've been there in the spring and the fall, and you can never see this from the ground. So this is this hidden chimney that is on the side of the Eiffel Tower. Like I said, most people never see it. From above, you could kind of see it. You just see, of course, the top of it. But it actually has this very long, mysterious history of people not knowing what it was for and why it is there. But it was built in 1887. At the same time, they were building the Eiffel Tower, and it was used. It was put into to help build the foundation. So they ended up using it because they had machines and everything at that time. This is, 1887. And so they needed steam powered machines. And this was actually basically this chimney was to relieve the steam coming out of the ground below it once they got to a point where, they were covering the ground and they were working on the rest of the structure. So every once in a while, still steam sometimes escapes because of the lifts that are below the Eiffel Tower. But it's really cool. I was very excited when I heard that we could actually see it today, because it's usually shrouded in trees around there, but it's very visible today. When they were building the Eiffel Tower, what is astounding is that not one single person died in the construction of the Eiffel Tower. They did have somebody that actually snuck in one night, climbed up it, and jumped off and perished. But the actual construction of it, not a single person died. Considering some of them are hanging off of ropes and everything else, I don't think that's I don't think that's exactly a job I would really love to enjoy having. But to maybe be that close to the Eiffel Tower would be okay too. But it was finished on March 31st, 1889, sorry. And on May 6th, 1889, it opened to the public at the exhibition. In 6 months in the ticket sales, Gustave Eiffel made back all of his money that he had spent to build it. In 6 months, it was paid for. And of course, for quite a long time, he was getting all of the money from the tickets. So he was doing pretty well for himself. At the time when it first opened, there was not an elevator. So people had to walk up these 1,710 steps if they wanted to go to the very top. During the exhibition, if you did go all the way to the top, you were given a commemorative cane that was made for it. It said the Eiffel Tower. It said all, that it was still the 300-meter tower, but it was given to people, and there's only like 2 of them still in existence today, which would be pretty cool. But in 1893, Mr. Eiffel was kind of embroiled with everything that was happening with the Panama Canal scandal. There is a lot of construction going on. And so he kind of stepped away from being the face of the company, and he really was focusing on all of his, he was really interested in science, and he was doing everything he could to look into figuring out a way to keep the Eiffel Tower, because it was only supposed to stay up for 20 years and then it was going to come down. So he started doing some work, and he started talking to some people, and they decided to put a radio tower up on the very top of it, which actually saved it. The first radio tower, the signal extended to the Pantheon, which is not very far away. But then within a few, beginning of 1900s, it went all the way to the United States. But we can't, we'll have to see when we come back on the other side, the names that are on the statue. But in the Eiffel Tower, she stands out here, the Grande Dame, she stands out here, and she gets pelted by the environment, of course. In the summer, the iron will swell up on the very hot days, 6 inches. So she gets a little bit taller. On a very windy day, it will actually sway a tiny little bit, especially at the top. And if it's in the winter time and it's icy and snowy, they actually will close it down, because they can't put salt or sand on anything, because it will actually ruin the paint, which we don't want it to do. I'm not sure if we could see. Hopefully we could kind of see out into the Champ de Mars here. It is all blocked off. I'm sure the little scurrying friends that like the Champ de Mars that live in the bushes are enjoying this right now, even though there's nobody there picnicking. But the Champ de Mars here that we're looking at, it was named after the Roman god of war, Mars. It was here that the very first Bastille Day happened on July 14th, 1790, and the 1 year anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. A huge party was here. There was lots of wine. There was a lot of naked people. They had this crazy, crazy huge party. And that was kind of where they decided that maybe July 14th was going to be, this should be a big day. But before that, long ago, going way back to Gallo-Roman times, this had been a site of many battles that had occurred. Quite a few people died here in many fights over a long period of time. At the very end of it, we can't really see, but there used to be the Wall of Peace. That was this really beautiful glass wall that was put up on either side. If you stood back, you got this amazing view of the Eiffel Tower between it. It was put up in 2000. It was only supposed to be up for 4 months, but it remained until just this last summer. And then it was taken down because they are building a temporary structure over there for the Grand Palais, because the Grand Palais is going through a huge renovation as well, also for the Olympics. So they're going to do a huge temporary structure down there at the end. They are moving the Wall of Peace over near Les Invalides. But of course, the people around there are getting ticked off. So it's probably going to take a little bit longer than they hope to get it put up. And then just past that, you have the École Militaire, which was built under Louis XV. It was partially funded by Madame de Pompadour, his chief favorite mistress and longtime confidant. She ended up putting actually up quite a bit of the money for it. It was a very elite military school. You basically had to have, your family had to be somehow attached to the king or had served under his campaigns to be able to get into it. Napoleon ended up actually going to that school later on. He kind of tricked some people to get into it. But it's it's not open to the general public except for on Patrimoine weekend, which I think I talk about every single time we do these videos. My very favorite weekend in Paris. It's the third weekend in September. It is definitely interesting to be there if you're interested in any of these places that you can never go in. Inside there's a stable that you got to go hang out with the horses for a really long time, which was really fun. But then they also have a chapel in there. There is the Salon de Marchaux. It was during the Revolution. It had huge paintings of Louis XV and other royals. During the Revolution, those were the revolutionaries got in there, destroyed all of that. Then Mr. Napoleon decided he was going to make it his office. So he ended up setting up his office in there. And then in 1871, during the Commune, the communards got into the building and started trying to destroy things. And the soldiers of General Douay ended up coming in there. They were all in the salon. And one of the officers shot at one of the communards and hit the mirror, and the mirror is still there with the bullet hole in it. So I love that they kind of keep those things there. It just makes gives history such a tangible thing to see. And but I'll post a picture of it. It was pretty interesting to see there. But that office, had quite the history, of course. And of course, Napoleon wanted to have it as his own personal little space there. And then we'll walk around. Back over around hopefully to the other side. We could hopefully get around. They placed that glass wall up around the Eiffel Tower to, of course, protect it from anybody that wanted to do anything bad, since it is such a huge tourist attraction. I remember when my grandparents first went, in the pictures that we have, their first trip in 1972, the cars, you could just drive up and park underneath it. And it's pretty interesting to see what a difference it is. A lot of people don't love the wall, but it is clear, and it serves its purpose. We have to, obviously, in this day and age, take some precautions, but you could still, they actually made the entrances actually a little bit easier. So it actually kind of cleaned up the waiting time. You could get in a little bit quicker, but they are, with all the painting they were doing. They did, I mentioned earlier that the painting, how it takes 18 months to do it. It does, it's quite, it's a pretty humongous structure. The thing I think is absolutely fascinating is that how big the tower is, and because the weight is distributed, the weight going into the ground is no different than any of you that are watching this, or myself sitting in a chair. The legs of the Eiffel Tower is the equivalent of basically a person sitting in a chair, and that's what the weight that goes into the ground that is holding it up, which is pretty fascinating. My very, very favorite part of it is where you see the arch, where it's so lacy and it's so beautiful, especially if you take the elevator up and I always walk down it, because you could get some really amazing pictures on the way down, and you're kind of walking down where the legs are. But my favorite part is because it's just so beautiful and lacy. That actually serves no function to the Eiffel Tower itself. It's just purely decorative, but it's really gorgeous. When the city of Paris actually took over the Eiffel Tower ownership, long after Eiffel, they ended up taking a few things off. And when you see on the very first floor there, I'll post a picture. I have this actually at the end, I'll turn my camera on and give you a little show and tell of this book I have. But it was actually, it had like these beautiful, over each and every section of the windows, it had little arches, and it was just really beautiful. They ended up taking quite a few pieces off of the tower just to alleviate a little bit of weight on it. Down the lifts, Gustave Eiffel actually added the elevators not long after it opened. And those actually are all hydraulic. There's two different ones. If you do take it, you go down, you go up it, you go to the first floor, and it stops there because it actually has to, the elevator itself kind of actually has to change its direction a little bit, because it is going up almost sideways when you're going up from the ground to the first floor. Then it gets a little straighter. That's also why there is a separate elevator to go to the very top, because obviously the same elevator couldn't do that. But it's all done by hydraulics. I was really lucky to do a behind the scenes Eiffel Tower tour where I got to go down into the basement, and I completely forgot and hadn't even looked at the pictures until yesterday. But I'm going to do a post on my Instagram in the next couple days about that. I'll do two different ones, because there's the basement where you see all the hydraulics of the elevator that powers the elevator, which date back to 1899. They've been modernized a little, but you'll see when I show the pictures, it is definitely from 1899. There's also off into the Champ de Mars. You walk out there a bit, you could actually go down. I got to go down into the bunker that they had created that was used by the military, but in it also has a panel of all the colors. The Eiffel Tower, when it was first built, it was kind of a reddish brown color. Eiffel actually wanted to be this ochre yellow color, which is what they're actually going to be painting it now for the Olympics. But if you look at the color it currently is, it's been for a long time, is actually called specifically called Eiffel Tower brown. If you look at them, I saw somebody posted a picture I saw online of the two next to each other. You could barely tell the difference. It's not all of a sudden going to be gleaming gold, even though I think that would be pretty fantastic. But it does, it takes quite a bit of time. It takes 60 tons of paint. By the end of the 7 years, only 15 tons of the paint remains still on the building. A lot of it gets, with the elements and pollution, a lot of the paint gets eaten away. So it's pretty amazing. It costs 3 to 4 million euros to paint the Eiffel Tower every 7 years. But underneath it, one of my other favorite things is underneath that first level of where you see the windows going across all the way around the entire structure, there's 72 names. And people always wonder who those names are. When Gustave became really interested in science, he ended up, falling in love with all these different scientists. So he had the 72 different there was mathematicians, doctors, scientists, tons and tons of people that he actually had their names added to the Eiffel Tower. So he had the 72 names painted on him. When they did the first renovation of it in the mid 1900s, they actually painted over all of them. But the city of Paris, when they took over the rights, they ended up redoing them. So the names are back on there. But it's something every time I'm around there, people always wonder who those names are. Most of the names, I have a whole list of them. The only one I really recognized was Arago, which is the markers that you see through the city of Paris, which, were kind of made famous by the Da Vinci Code. But that was pretty much the only name as far as a mathematician or a scientist that I really recognized on there. but even though, you know, she's bandaged up a little right now, getting ready to get cleaned up, and it's only 20 people. There's only 20 people that actually work on the painting. They start at the very top. There's 3 different shades of the color, and it varies. It goes from lighter to darker, so that when you are standing back, it all looks the very same. But they start at the very top and they work their way down. The lights, of course, the lights were added that the sparkle that we love and see every night on the hour were added in 2000. They were added for the millennium, and everybody loved it so much they kept it there. My favorite story about the lights is how they actually keep track of them. They have cameras that are in the buildings all the way around the Eiffel Tower, and they take when it starts sparkling, it sparkles on the hour from dusk until 1 a.m. for 5 minutes. And when they start sparkling, these cameras take thousands and thousands of photos a second. And then they send the photos back, and then there's the people that are in charge of the lighting of the Eiffel Tower go through, and they'll say, oh, you know, number, you know, 2, you know, G-24, whatever, of the 2000 lights, they could tell that that light is out and needs to be replaced. And so then they go in there and replace the lights. But the top of the tower, they put the big searchlight on it that kind of it's like Paris's own little lighthouse. That was actually intended from the very start of by Eiffel. He actually wanted that at the very start, but it took a long after he had died for that to actually happen. But she is definitely, I mean, can you imagine the people when it was being built, they hated it. And Guy de Maupassant, the writer, hated it so much he would go there almost every day for lunch because it was the only time he didn't have to see it, is when he was on it. But all these people hated it. They called it this ugly skeleton. And honestly, could a single one of you imagine Paris without it? I mean, it definitely is the symbol of France and of Paris. When you see that, you know. I mean, it's used in everything. You see it in commercials. There was just a beauty commercial of some sort the other day, and there's the drawing of the Eiffel Tower. They just use it on everything. And as soon as you think of it, see it, you think of Paris. So it is pretty fantastic. But I will go ahead. I'll turn my little camera on. And I'll show you guys, and I could post a picture of this book. It's absolutely humongous. It's this, I've had this book for probably 15 years or so. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's huge. And it's basically I'm not an engineer by any scope of the imagination, but if you ever wanted to be, it's filled with like every drawing and every single thing of the Eiffel Tower you ever want, as far as the structure is created. It's also in like 5 different languages. Here is basically, it's like there's a general idea. Here's the plan of the lifts, the elevators. I don't even know, but it's a pretty fascinating book that you could see on the cover here, where I was mentioning about the part that was taken off. See where all of that really beautiful lace work is over the first floor. That is what was removed, which removed quite a few pounds. You could see actually in this, you could see the original Palais de Chaillot that was over there at the Trocadero. So it is just called the Eiffel Tower, and I got it a long time ago. I will find it and put it on my website too, on my boutique. I'll put a link in there to it, and I will post it in the Facebook group so that you guys could all see it. But it has all the very technical stuff that's in about the Eiffel Tower that you ever want. But it does have a whole section of the story and the building, and it's just filled with like absolutely amazing photographs. but I got this, I think I've had this for like 17 or 18 years. It's in German, it's in Japanese, it has all the stories, quite a few stories. It's all the very technical aspects of the Eiffel Tower, but it's incredibly interesting. So definitely, if you want to know some more about that. Oh, thank you, Jamie. That's so sweet of you. But I will post a link to that. And also next Sunday is Valentine's Day. So we're going to take you around Montmartre and show you a few of the Amélie places, but also some of the very sweet places filled with love. And of course, there's one place that everybody always thinks of it up there at Montmartre. So we'll share that with you too, and the story behind it. And then the day before that, on Sunday, I am going to do a live Zoom that is going to be all about love in the Louvre. And so I'm already working on all of the different sculptures and paintings that basically exude love. There's quite a few of them, and different kinds of love. Maybe it's a mother and a child, or but I'm going to do that next Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the 13th. And then our walk will be around Montmartre on Sunday at 7 a.m. So we hope that you join us for that. Those are going to be really fun. And I will put, they're all on our Facebook group too, in La Vie Creative, as well as my page, Bleu Blanc Rouge. If you're not on follow me on Instagram, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, where I put stories every single day in French history, but they also go onto my Bleu Blanc Rouge Facebook page too. So you could check out all of those things, a little bit of Paris history every single day, and my newsletter, and of course our podcast. So we have the podcast tomorrow is about the great granddaughter of Madame Clicquot, and she is a pretty fascinating woman. And I came across her when I was actually reading a book about Madame Clicquot, and this woman did so many things. You're gonna definitely want to check it out tomorrow. So, but thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much, Kate and Lauren, for battling the elements for us and share, so we could all get to see. Isn't that part of the Eiffel Tower just gorgeous? Oh, I love it. There they are, our intrepid travelers in their cute pink hats. Thank you so much, everybody. And Kate and Lauren, go and get nice and toasty and warm. Have a Vin show walking, not on a terrace. But thank you guys all so much. And I will put some details and some stuff in the Facebook group that we saw today, so you could see it tomorrow, or you could see it when you go. Hopefully, I wish it was tomorrow. But thanks everybody, and have a wonderful day. A bientôt.